This one is Alex Oliveira versus Peter Sobotta. Alex Oliveira, he's a cowboy. So he's another guy that's been around the UFC for a little while. He had a little bit of a struggle there for a while, but now he's coming back with his recent win. It's a split decision win over Max Griffin. And he's going against Peter Sobotta. And Peter Sobotta, he's another guy from Germany. He's 6-1. He's 33 years old. He's a welterweight. He's 6 feet tall, and he's been fighting in the UFC for a little while here. He's been fighting since, I think, 2015, 2014 was his first fight in the UFC. Mm-hmm. He's been up and down, but he has a couple of good wins. One of his wins was actually Nicholas Dalby.
Yep.
And he also has a win by knockout over Ben Saunders with the knee.
Yeah.
And Ben Saunders is the king of knees.
Yeah. And so, and what's interesting about that is Sabotta's a ground game. He's a ground guy.
Yes.
He's a submission artist. And
he has 10 wins. So he has 10 wins by submission.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Sorry, I just cut you off.
He's a submission guy.
Yeah.
So it's really wild when he goes in there and he's able to knock out, a kickboxer.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But he does have 5 knockouts overall on his record. So he has that going for him. And like I said, he's got some good wins there. He's got the better stretch going on here. If you look at their records right now, as far as his last loss is to Leon Edwards.
Yeah, but that was 2 years ago. He hasn't fought since March of 2018.
Yeah, that is true.
So that's a question mark.
That is true. But if you look at it, Alex Oliveira lost to Nicholas Dalby, right? And as I just showed you, Peter beat him. So there's some... Obviously, MMA math doesn't work out like that.
Not always.
Doesn't work out, but that's the most recent performance.
You can gauge it.
That's the most recent. Actually, his most recent performance is the win over Max Griffin, but that was a split decision win. And he hasn't been that far up lately. He struggled in all those fights. They've all been close fights.
Yeah, all his fights are usually pretty close.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a guy, Alex Oliveira. When I first came on to him, I think it was in his fight versus Donald Cerrone.
So, cowboy versus cowboy.
Yeah, so the first time I heard of him, I didn't like him because he was nicknamed Cowboy, right? And I'm like, no, there's already a cowboy in the UFC. You got to change that, dude.
But it fits him.
But his personality, it works. And it grew on me. And then when Cowboy and him fought, it just made sense.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was a fun fight, and they both respected each other, and I really liked it.
One of the things that sidetracking here, but one of the things I really like about Cowboy is they've built a lot of character fights around him. Yeah. Cowboy versus cowboy. American whiskey versus, or American beer versus Irish whiskey.
Yeah.
So they found these different ways to try to tie in these stories with him. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But let's get back on track here.
But, when you go back to Alex Cowboy Oliveira, man, I became a fan of his after that cowboy fight, even though he lost the cowboy fight.
Yep.
He's a kickboxer. And
that fight was a long time ago too.
It was a while ago, a few years ago.
Yeah, 2016.
Yeah, I mean if you look at his record though, he's fought since he's been in the UFC. He's fought just about everybody in the 170 division.
Yeah, he beat Carlos Condit actually with
in a really good fight.
Yeah,
that thing was back and forth.
Yeah, well he beat him it was a guillotine choke, right?
Yeah.
So he caught him in a submission. Carlos Condit's known for having really good submission defense and really good submissions.
Yeah, and that fight was a good one, man. So. You look at him, he's a Thai guy, but he also knows a little bit of BJJ. I think currently right now what I read was he's a blue belt in BJJ. So, I mean, he's got, a little bit there. And then he's also a pretty solid wrestler. So he's kind of a well-rounded guy, not like super great anywhere, as we can tell by his record.
Yeah.
It kind of happens, And with Peter... Like I just mentioned, he hasn't fought since 2018 in over 2 years. So there's a lot of question marks around.
Anytime that there's a layoff like that, there's always going to be question marks. We've seen some guys that have come back after longer layoffs and look pretty good. Better. Dominic Cruz sometimes. He comes right off of layoffs and goes right fighting into title fights and stuff like that.
He's used to it
though. He is used to it. But you get those guys that come off those layoffs and then they look really good. Conor McGregor, when he came in and fought Donald Cerrone most recently, he had a fairly long layoff. I don't think it was 2 years.
About a year, I think, on that one.
It was a decent sized layoff, especially for a guy that likes to stay as active as Conor McGregor likes to stay. Based off of what I've seen as far as the records are concerned, he did have the long layoff, but I ultimately feel like Peter Sobotta is the better fighter here.
I think he's better on the ground for sure. He's a Dean Lister BJJ black belt.
Yep. But if you look at him recently, and it's hard to say recently, most of his wins in the second or in the later half of his career were either a knockout or a decision.
Yeah.
I don't know when his last submission win was. His last submission win was actually 2015. So while he does have a good ground game, that's not been what we've seen lately from him, and I kind of think that he's going to end up winning a decision.
You got so you're taking Sobotta with the decision?
Sobotta by decision.
Okay. See, that's where we finally have one where we're separated.
Oh, shoot.
Because I've got Alex Oliveira by decision, baby.
Woo!
Just because. And I think if you look at Tapology.
Just because?
Yeah, just because. No, if you look at Tapology right now, Oliveira's 85% out of 1,054 picks to win this fight. I think about a third of them have him by knockout. There's a little large margin there, even picking him by submission, which is interesting. I don't know that he's going to be able to submit Dean Lister black belt.
Well, you know, there's levels.
Things have happened.
There's levels, and I've seen crazier things happen.
Yeah, things happen. But I mean, the odds right now, Oliveira's a minus 185 favorite.
Yeah.
And you're looking at Sobotta's a plus 150 dog. Might be one for you to throw something on.
I might already have some on it.
Oh, there you go. So, but we finally have our first pick where we're actually opposite on.
There we go.
For me, I couldn't bring myself to pick Sobotta based off that 2-year layoff because I don't know what we're going to get with him.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
That is true. You never know what happens with those layoffs. I mean, you look at guys like Muhammad Ali, not saying that they're on the same level, but Ali's best years were probably spent out of the ring, dealing with legal stuff with the federal government. So,